Committee meeting on April 29th, 2024 at 7 p.m. We have one item on the agenda this evening, order number 24-100-9146, communication from Mayor Dumas together with the transfer in the amount of $2,784,983 from free cash to capital outlay to fund capital items for the police department, fire department, inspectional services, and the Department of Public Works. I'll begin by reading the letter submitted by the mayor. Dear Council President Ossing and councilors, enclosed for your acceptance is a transfer request from free cash in the amount of $2,784,983 to fund the CIP items for FY 2025. These items include requests from the police department, fire department, inspectional services, and Department of Public Works. I'm requesting the use of free cash for these items as they are all smaller in nature and is best financial practice to utilize free cash rather than bonding or adding to the tax levy. Majority of this request, $1,993,000, is for aging vehicles equipment with the Department of Public Works. The existing vehicles equipment within the DPW have reached the end of their useful life and will increase maintenance costs significantly if not replaced. I want to stress that the importance of these items in particular, as there is a specific time frame for ordering. May is the first order bank cycle, and November-December is the second. Due to delivery times of 6 months to 1 year, the timing of these purchases is imperative for cost savings and efficiency. Below is a breakdown of each individual request. Police Department. The Police Department request consists of 3 items: police cruisers, taser replacements, bulletproof vest replacements. The cruisers are replacing existing cruisers that have and will become more expensive to maintain than it becomes to purchase a new one. These tasers are in year 2 of a 5-year replacement program. Tasers need to be replaced every 5 years. Similar to the tasers, bulletproof vests have a lifespan of 5 years. Wherein they expire, currently 5 officers have vests that are due to expire in FY 2025 and need replacement. Those numbers are $280,500 for 4 police cruisers, $35,983 for the taser replacement, $5,500 for the bulletproof vest replacement. Then on to the fire department. The fire department requests consist of 2 items: replacement of both the fire station alerting system and radio box. The fire station alerting system is for replacement within each fire station. That includes ramping tones, new coded light installations, and automated dispatch alerting integrated with the new Red MX computer-aided dispatch software. The radio box replacement will include upgraded receivers, software, and hardware for aging equipment, and enhance the capability of monitoring and maintaining over 400 fire alarm systems that report directly to the dispatch center, including city and buildings. That breaks down to $100,000 for the fire station alerting system, $70,000 for the radio box replacement. Next is the inspectional services. The Inspectional Services Department has requested $300,000 for imaging and conversion of inspectional service records, assessors, property record cards, and conservation zoning records. This service would digitize close to 600 boxes of records and input them into a digital accessible database. Currently, these items make up the greatest number of public records requests and are housed within the Walker Building. These requests take up considerable staff, time, and energy due to retrieving the documents from the Walker Building and digitizing them ourselves. With this effort, we will have all records digitized, filed, accessible for these requests. In addition to public records requests, each respective department often refers to these documents for historical knowledge and information. That is broken down to $300,000 for the records, imaging, and conversion services. Next is the Department of Public Works. Department of Works requests consist exclusively of the replacement of aging vehicles equipment. As mentioned above, maintenance costs for these items will continue to increase and cost the city if they are not replaced. There is also a short window for ordering that will take place in May. and not placed again until November, December. A detailed breakdown is included with the enclosures, and that includes $1,993,000 for the replacement of aging vehicles and equipment. I'm requesting that the Finance Committee meeting be held no sooner than the week of April 29th, as some department heads would request are out of the office until then. Due to time-sensitive nature of this request, I would ask the council to consider a suspension of the rules. Department heads with request will join me at a future meeting to answer any questions you may have. Sincerely, J. Christian Dumas, Mayor. And getting started with that, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening. So the letter, I think, is pretty self-explanatory.
Absolutely.
I do have department heads to answer your questions, but I would like to share with you where we are with free cash. So if things were to be approved tonight for the 2.7, we have snow and ice, which is around $600,000. We have about another item for $25,000. That will leave us with $3.2 million remaining in free cash. That's if this was to be approved tonight. So it's still a good amount of money. My objective was not to burn through all the free cash. Obviously, it makes me a little nervous with negotiations, and I'd like to have that little security with my first budget cycle. The original request from all department heads was about $3.3 million, so we did some cutting on our end to make sure we figured out what was the priority and what the need was, so you can all whether approve that or not. So just so you know where we're at with the numbers, and once again, once everything is approved, if it is approved, and snow and ice, we're at about $3.2 million. All right, so. And
I just wanted to point out, too, I didn't, after reading the letter, I'd like to thank President Ossing and the councilors. Back in September, we, with good foresight, we decided to use to bond as opposed to free cash for the emergency communication system. And I think that was a great idea. The whole idea of that was not to strap the new administration. So with that said,
I'm very thankful, and for all of those that were there at that Friday morning meeting.
There was a Friday morning meeting.
Yeah,
on the first one I had, because I know it's with the inspectional services, I'd like to, I think we have some questions to addressing
Sure.
The $300,000 for the records, imaging, and conversion services.
Absolutely.
And believe me, I realize it's a time-consuming process. My thing is, back in the day when that started, I wasn't really that happy that the records were being moved to the Walker Building. I understand because of space. My issue was that it would cost money to have to do the conversion. Also, I don't know if it was vetted and looked into using maybe summer help or senior workers to get that going in place.
There's just so many amount of materials in the Walker Building, and it would take an exponentially amount more of time. I think that was looked at numerous times, and Tim can attest to that. I think this was on the radar for many moons, even before with Commissioner Cook. It just never came to fruition. Public records request is now being inundated with more and more. I get a report from legal, and it's just very time consuming. Takes up multiple departments, and to streamline that. And again, we're trying to make sure that we're going into more technology-based. I guess my question is, if it doesn't happen now, then when? Because at some point it's going to happen, and then the records are going to keep building up. But again, that's for all you to decide. I'm just trying to throw things down there for you.
And that was my other question, the longer that we wait.
Right.
Now, I'm thinking that there's a process in place now with individual departments moving forward, digitizing, and they're not going to have to backtrack on any new information. So now I'm thinking there's a process in place for individual departments to utilize this system to digitize things.
Correct. That would be moving forward. Yeah, because everything kind of goes through OpenGov that is digitized. Correct. It's just all the old public record requests that are not. So yes.
All right. I'll leave it to the rest of the Finance Committee and any councilors that have questions. Councilor Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Mayor, for coming. I have a few questions about the record scanning. So I feel like Counselor or Chair Irish asked a couple of them, so let me try to pare it down. So for the $300,000, what do we get for that amount? So it would be the actual service of digitizing
Correct.
the files, and then once it's all digitized, does that $300,000 then provide technical assistance? Is it our own program it's getting scanned into? The OpenGov program is?
So we'll have it on a disk, and then we can take that information and move it onto a software-based platform. But we have to get that digitized first to take that next step.
So as far as the labor hours for scanning, did they give you any idea of, I'm just trying to wrap my head around $300,000 is.
Yeah, I think Tim can attest that, but I think it's like yeah, please. I think it's like 1.5 million pieces of documentation. I could be wrong with that, but am I completely off base with that? No, you're not. I think it was 1.5.
So it's the inspectional services and assessors.
It's assessors, it's
Okay.
conservation.
Yeah.
Correct.
It's approximately 1.5 million sheets of paper that are in boxes. There's, in inspectional services alone, there's 423 boxes sitting in the Walker building. And then for the assessor's records that we're looking at, it's 73 boxes, it's much smaller. And then for conservation zoning, there's 94 boxes.
94?
Yeah, they're not in great shape in that Walker building, and those have been there longer than I was been here. So, you get a storm that gets water infiltration, mold, those records are going to be destroyed. We won't have them. They've already lost some that were sitting in the tower prior to me being here. So I do like to get these digitized by law. We're supposed to be required to keep those information. And currently, through that slow scanning process, I estimate it'll be at least another 10, 15 years to get those records that are sitting there scanned and digitized. My predecessor started a program in 2016 to digitize everything going forward, but we still get some paper records that come in, but the majority is digitized. This should take care of that need to get everything in one place. So the public, realtors, we get calls, developers, contractors, searching for records to find out for the construction and development of a particular building. What was there, how was there? It's very important for them because it takes them more time and resources to get that information. They have to rebuild a building from scratch by doing observation and measurements, but where they can use those tools. So it's very helpful also for code enforcement to find out what legally was there. We have records for that, where we're wondering, is that a legal 2-family? Is it a legal 3-family? And other activities going on. It's a reference point for us along with the GIS tools that we have. So it's very helpful for us. I don't know what else I can answer for you, but that's kind of the process, what we're looking for. In my experience with other jurisdictions, we did perform that task in other jurisdictions, and it's helped and made it much more efficient to run the department. So, yeah.
Thank you. I just have one other question. Do you have an approximate time frame for how long it would take if we were to utilize a service to digitize?
Yes. It's approximately 3 months.
About 3 months?
Yes. So it's, and they're pretty good about that. They're one of the best companies out there that does this work. And when I did it in another jurisdiction, it took about 3 months, and we have a little bit more than what we had in that other jurisdiction. So it's a pretty good ballpark. It does go out of state now. It goes to Connecticut, where when I had it done, it was done in Northborough, which was very close by. But I have confidence that, if we need a record, we can always request it, and they'll retrieve it for us. And there's no cost for that.
So will the records be physically stored off-site then?
No, they'll be returned, but while they're scanning them, they'll do them in batches. If you need a record that's being scanned, they can retrieve it back for you. Because they're all documented and tagged, so if we had a public record request for whatever reason, we can retrieve that record.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. That was helpful.
You're welcome.
Good question, Councilor. Councilor Doucette?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So This was a flashback for me because I was working on a proposal back in the late 90s to scan one of the departments of Boston's paperwork, you know. And so we went through part of this process, and it was interesting to see how it improved. It was also with RICO, by the way, back then. So these guys have been doing it for quite a while. I have complete respect, and, you know, there is a records retention and handoff approach as far as making sure that the document is handed off properly from the origin throughout the entire system and then back to the origin. These guys address all that, which is, I think, is an important part of this. When all is said and done, this material then becomes online. So ideally, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you pull up some information on a particular address, all the old scans that date back, you know, decades, possibly centuries, would then show up.
That's correct.
So that having that information online, accessible immediately, puts us, you know, back into the 21st century instead of having someone dig through some boxes wherever they need to be, you know. But what does happen to the originals? Do we still store the originals? Do we destroy the originals?
I would destroy them after we confirm that the data is in place, in the right place.
Okay.
We would do an error check.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that was really, you know,
Yes.
because once it scans and everything's available online, everything going forward is online. The paper is a legacy of the past, and we don't necessarily need it anymore. So I think that's important as well.
Through the Secretary of State office, where after that point, they were allowed to destroy those records, the paper records.
Right,
if it's
right,
confirmed.
because everything would be online.
Yep.
So that's all I have for this, but thank you for the clarification.
Councilor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you guys for being down here tonight. My real question stems around the assessor property record cards. So those are those little, you know, I don't know the dimensions of them, but those small little cards.
Flash cards, about 5 or 7, yes.
Now, do those ever have attachments attached to those cards?
Generally not, but they
Okay.
could.
Right.
They may have something clipped to them, but they're the little cards in the file cabinet. The cabinet's not very large.
Right.
It's about the size of this table.
I just want to highlight, you know, just from my time being here at the city, I can recall those cards very well, going through and filing them over and over again. I believe they were stored in the assessor's office as recently as 2 years ago?
Yes.
Okay. From my understanding at the time, those cards were brought to my desk because they were unorganized, nobody ever needed them. There was never really any need to see them. And so I went through and organized them by date.
Okay.
Because they had never been organized by date before that. So I was curious, just in my own mind, what would happen if somebody had a public records request for one of those documents? Because, you know, 1954 was next to 1984. So how would we come up with one of those? So I'm just wondering, there's really a need for those cards at the present moment?
Yes, we use them with code enforcement alone very frequently, just to verify if construction was done with or without permit, with or not compliance with zoning. So it's very valuable for us. I don't understand why the assessor's office doesn't see value in it, but we do find value in it, and we do reference them all the time. It's a small subset, and I think the additional cost would be prohibitive. So.
Right. No, I did see that too. I think it's 73 boxes in comparison to the greater 600, but I still do kind of have a strong concern over that, just knowing the past history of where they were stored. Yeah. It seemed to me that they'd been neglected in the assessor's office. It appears that there's a need for them, but
I don't have control over their data, but it's, you know, they felt it wasn't valued, but we have value, and that's why I wanted to include something that we would access.
Okay. So. Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Councilor Orman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. The first one is the department you mentioned, obviously Assessors Conservation Building. Board of Health, are they part of this plan?
Not as far as the record aspects are, but they could be included in a future project, yes. I wanted to keep the scope small enough where we made sure that they could accomplish the task and it was a reasonable cost.
And other departments too, such as the mayor's office, city council, so forth, because as noted, public records are being requested. But yeah, we'll see how yours goes, and it's very prominent out there in the public world now that people are digitizing.
Yes.
And in respect to that, how did you find this company? Did you go on the procurement list, or did you go for a bid?
No, from past experience, I used them in another jurisdiction that I was a building commissioner for, so I had experience with them. They're also on the state vendor list, so you
They
don't
are,
have- yeah,
okay.
so you don't have to go through the procurement process.
That's what I was hoping to hear. If I didn't hear that, I'd say we need to make sure they're on the bidders
Yes,
list.
definitely,
That's
make
fine.
sure they're vetted properly.
And future documents, so I come in as a builder, drop off, whatever, are you gonna require now they be digitized, that all plans?
We
from this
already
point
are.
on? You already do that?
Yes.
How about the other two departments? Excuse me.
I can't
Do you know
speak-
offhand?
I cannot speak for them.
Conservation assessors?
Conservation, yes.
Yes, okay.
I believe so. They have limited, but, I'll roll together site plan review, because Priscilla and I work together on that aspect, so we do ask for digitization, because they're on OpenGov. And Conservation, I'm not sure if they ask for a digital set, but I'm pretty sure they do.
And then the last question is, I'm sorry,
We're getting
Mr. Mayor.
confirmation that it's a yes.
Yeah.
What's that
We're
again?
getting confirmation through you, Mr. Chair, that, that it's a yes.
Oh, okay, good, thank you. And so I come in as a resident, I want a plot plan, my computer screen isn't that large. Will you have the availability, I presume there'll be a charge to provide a plan on a plotter? Do you have a plotter is the question?
We do have a plotter, yes.
So if someone wanted a plan, they wanted the paper version versus electronic version digitized, is that available?
We could probably offer that, yes.
That's-
That plotter only scans right now, it doesn't have ink in it, so,
It doesn't have ink in it?
have
No?
ink in it. We don't get too many requests for digitized.
No, and
Yeah.
respect
But we
that.
could do it, I could talk to IT, that was a light lift.
There may be the point where someone, a homeowner may want a paper copy, and is that available? And-
Most everyone wants digital.
Which I agree. I'm 100% for paperless
Yeah.
offices.
Yep.
It's just, once in a while, because plot plans can be large, people have trouble on their computers with
Yep.
small screens, that's
Nope, I
why the
agree.
question. But you do have a plotter, so
do.
that's fine, and as I said,
We could offer that service.
very happening thing out in the real world of public domain, and public record request will hopefully be a lot easier after this is done.
I hope so.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. If no further, President Austin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, a couple of things. So, again, 1.5 million pages, $300,000, it's $5 a page. So if you just think about going down to take a page out and throw it through a copy machine, someone's labor, that's more than what I call a very efficient. I'm assuming that 1.5 million is correct, and the 300,000 gets us an ability to sort. What this will do, it'll free up space. I'm sure the chief will be happy. Eliminates a fire hazard of all the boxes hanging around the Walker Building. It'll improve our ability to find the documents going forward, and it frees up labor for our staff to having to go find and sift through. As Councilor Frachillo will tell you, it's no easy task to go sift through all that stuff. So, Mr. Chairman, going through the priorities here, you started with inspection services, but I'd take a vote on each one. Do inspection service, police, fire, DPW, just so as you go, so we're not bouncing back and forth. So if everybody's happy, ask for the vote and then move on.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
If I could just,
Council
Mrs.
Austin, can I check your math? You said it was $5 a sheet?
You said 1.5 million.
It's 20 cents.
I'm just doing 3,000, I just took the $300,000 for the.
$20,000 divided by 1.5.
Yeah.
It's 20 cents. If you do it the other way, it's fine. Yeah.
That's 20%. Well,
Yeah, you're taking a sheet, dividing 1.5 million sheets into 300,000. It's 20 cents a sheet,
That's even better.
yes.
I was going to say, that's, I like that.
Can't do it that cheaply.
Within the material are a couple of documents that have unit pricing. It also says from Rico that this, I believe this is dated 3/21/24. It says it's good for 30 days, so we're at the 30 days. Is this,
I can get a fresher copy. I've talked to the vendor, he's gonna honor that price, so.
okay,
It won't be an issue.
and it's estimated. I don't want it to be
Correct.
more than, and then you have to come back for more money or not finish.
When we did the estimate, we estimated high to make sure we covered it all. I didn't want to come back for anything, so.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Smith.
to your point, when, during the transition, Tim brought this up, and I thought like, well, that's not going to happen, because I didn't think that it was a need, but now, sitting in the mayor's office and seeing how much time each department has to go through record requests.
I acknowledge that,
I was
absolutely.
pretty shocked with that. It's funny how things on the council and then on the when you're up on the fourth floor, you get a
No, I
bigger
understand.
picture scenario and how much time is utilized and where it's, so to make this city hall more efficient and effective, this kind of made sense, which is why it was a priority now. And moving forward, if there are new paper that needs to be digitized, obviously we can look into interns for that, so we don't have to keep.
And it's good to
so-
have that process in place. That's what I was concerned, just moving forward. That's fine.
Sure, and I'm totally open to that. But I think that's a big lift for an intern or someone to take on that burden. But again, I didn't think this was going to be a need, but here we are, so.
Absolutely.
But, yeah,
Councilor.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I just had an additional question. It's related to the ownership of the product once it's complete and the backup.
Yes, we get a copy, a disc, and we own it. So we can't be, the disc is a backup in case there's, ransomware and all that stuff that goes out there. We can always, they won't, there's no one to capture our data. We can always reload it. So you can code what you want, we'll just restart up.
So in the city, we'll have a backup as well?
Correct.
Just in case it
Yep.
does get corrupted?
Yep.
With that note, unless there's any other further discussion, I'll motion to approve the section for inspectional services for the request as being made for the $300,000 for records imaging and conversion services.
Thank you, Councilor. I will second that motion. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the $300,000 from capital outlay departments to records imaging. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next one, I'll go to the police department. If anyone has any questions in regards to what Chief Georgie had submitted in his letter, Councilor Orm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll let him get situated first. Answering on the run, Chief? It's the way your job is, isn't it? Thank you. In respect to the request, no, here it is right here. I don't have any trouble with the request for the vest and so forth. I'm wondering if that should even be part of your budget down the road, the tasers and the bulletproof vest. I mean, if that's a routine thing and they expire every 5 years, down the road, I wouldn't see that as being a problem, being a budget item. As it relates to the 4 cruisers, my question was, in average, how many cruisers do we replace a year and how many cruisers do we have?
Well, we normally replace between 4 and 5 cruisers a year. I think last year we did 5 cruisers, but they were administrative cruisers, so they were unmarked cruisers. And those cruisers last a lot longer. We don't use them as often. I mean, they don't get worn in the same way. But as far as frontline patrol cruisers like we're asking for this year, they're usually every 2 to 3 years that we would turn those over, just because they're run almost 24 hours a day. Sorry about my glasses. They run 24 hours a day, and they do have some time off, but that's normally the time frame we look at.
And what kind of mileage do you hit on those by the 3rd year?
Well, the ones we're trading in now, those are over, I think they're over 100, I could be wrong. If you'll allow me tonight, Officer LaRose from our traffic units here, and he handles a lot of our cruiser maintenance and purchasing and stuff, so he might have a more accurate answer than mine.
I thought it was. It is
in here.
It is in the
On
document.
the last page, so.
I'm not testing you in any way.
No, the ones that we would be trading in this year, they're all at the bottom. They're the SRO 1, 2, and the detail car there. So they're close to 100,000. And normally what we do is when we would trade in, when we replace a marked cruiser, we will see if there's another use for it. If we can move it to a detailed car, we can move it to one of the schools, we'll do that just because they're used less frequently. The mileage is not really an important point at that point. But as far as the number of total cruises we have, Andy, I'll defer to you.
It's approximately 30. I'd have to count them all up. We have around 30 cars.
About 30 total vehicles?
Yes.
And one last question. I've seen them once in a while when I went to an environmental conference here and there. They were looking at the hybrid models, not electric, although electric's out there, I guess, too, but the hybrid models. Do you have any of your fleet that utilizes modern technology such as electrical or hybrid?
Yeah, so we don't have any electric vehicles yet. We do have hybrid cruisers, though. Some of the administrative ones, like, for instance, my cruiser is a hybrid, and we do have some of the frontline cruisers are also hybrid. Those would be some of the ones, and Andy could speak to a little bit better than I, as far as that we're taking off the front line and moving to some of the other, uses, just because we've had some difficulty with them.
Okay. The reason I ask is the DPW is getting rid of a 2008 Ford Escape that's a hybrid. And I know hybrids there's pros and cons. Is it a maintenance issue, or is it just not perform?
It's breakdowns. Right now we have 7 hybrids. We had 5 unmarked cars. We had 4 additional marked cars that I traded in just because they were constantly breaking down. P7 we've had for 2 years. It's been out of service for over a year. We just got it back after 10 months. Since we got that one, the 3 generators have been replaced. The generator is a giant alternator for the hybrid battery. P6 already had a hybrid battery replaced. That just had a hybrid part that went down that cost us $1,300 because it wasn't covered under warranty. Another hybrid was P3. It had 3,000 miles on it. The generator burnt out. So just constant check engine lights.
Understandable.
Yeah. So for frontline cars, right now the technology isn't there. It's just...
Unfortunately,
yes.
But I appreciate the truth in that, too. I've had a few hybrids, and the Escape died too quickly, in my view, but that was probably the same as the DPWs. But hopefully they'll get there someday. I don't know if the electric's proving itself, but at present, are you looking for 4 regular engines, basically?
Right, there would be gas cruisers, yes.
And hopefully the industry will respond to the breakdowns. I don't know if this is national or not, but, you know, we don't want to be buying something that's going to break down right away, you know,
if you go
especially
online,
at
there's
3,000.
many departments that are completely getting rid of hybrids because of this. It's just nonstop breakdowns.
Well, I appreciate the answers, and I support this request, but I'm sure there's other questions out there.
Sir.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Vital?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, Chief, Mayor. A couple weeks ago, we okayed the purchase of a new fire truck, and I asked the fire chief, do you do a capital forecast? And he said, I've always wanted to, but the mayor never really was keen to that idea. Do you do a capital forecast?
Maybe you can explain to me, what do you mean by capital forecast?
So that you can basically say that this vehicle should be ready to replace that on this day in the future. You know, so whether it's, 20,000, on average, the cruiser goes 25,000 miles a year, we want to keep it to 50,000, so we're going to replace a vehicle every 3 years or every 5 years.
Well, I think the maintenance records and what we submit to the council here certainly helps us. I mean, we can kind of track as far as what cruisers are going to come up in what years. Again, the difficulty is kind of forecasting that a little bit, and that sometimes we do move them off of a front line to another role in the department. So they could get up to 80, 90,000, but we would move them off. They could work at the schools, or they could work in a different unit. And I mean, we have some here that have over 103. The last one that says SRO 3 is a 2019 with 103,000 miles on it, and it rates as poor in our records, but at the same time, I think Officer LaRose could attest to the fact that that's a gas cruiser, and that's held up very well over the years. So, and because it's at the school and it's not being used as often, then it'll work there.
But there's no forecast. There's no, you can't tell me that in 3 years from now, we're going to need 4 more cruisers based on vehicles we purchased last year.
Roughly, they're about 3 years.
Right. Well, consistency based upon the capital improvement plan, we've been getting new cars every year based upon what our history states, so we can forecast.
Shouldn't it be based on mileage and not just based on a calendar?
It's not based on...
It is.
I know some of it is. I mean, this report was...
It is based on,
I'm saying,
it is based on mileage to some extent, and based upon the quality of the car, whether it's hybrid or gas, so.
Okay, thank you.
President Austin.
So if I could help Councilor Vital, so I've got to be at least 10-plus years now. We've gone through, it's been about 3 to 4, sometimes 5 police vehicles every year. the normal expectancy, and Officer Rose, you can correct me, it's usually 3 to 4 years. We've been lucky, we've been getting almost 5 to 6 out of them. We've been very good about it. So that capital forecast, it's just, for the police department, it's just built in. 30 vehicles, we just get 4 to 5 every year. And it just, we let the police department decide which ones come out of service based on use and in history, I guess. But it's been effective, and as you can see from the sheet, they're pretty current. But the ones that are up in mileage, the police department would like to move out. So that capital forecast, probably not the discussion for today, but and Council Roby can back me up. I can't remember the last time we haven't done 4 or 5 cruises a year. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brendan.
The other portion that doesn't show up with the mileage is every idle hour is, Ford says, is 30 miles. So every time a car is at an accident for an hour, that's an additional 30 miles. So that does not show up on the actual mileage. So these vehicles have way more miles on the motor than it shows up on this list.
We've tried to work out a system over the last 3 years where the supervisors have a schedule on what cars are worked on what shifts. So we try to give them a day off. They're assigned to certain 3 officers, 1 on midnights, 1 on day shift, 1 on evening shift. And they'll work for 4 days, and then when those officers are off, the cruiser will be off. So it'll have some downtime that it's not running, they're not all the same running, excuse me, 24, 7 days a week.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor Roby?
Thank you. I would agree on the police cars that we do anticipate purchasing, but I think your question is a good one, and although it was mentioned this is not the time to do it, I will put the mayor on the spot to remind him that we just finished a 5-year plan, and we need a new 5-year plan. You will notice on the request form for the tasers, it is broken down for amount for the next 5 years. The vehicles is not. But it is something that I think the council would appreciate having so that we know what to look for going forward with purchases from all the departments. And I know it's a lot of work, and the budget's your priority right now, but it is something that I think we would all appreciate getting.
Okay.
And not just from you, I mean from the mayor in general, for the city, for a 5-year plan.
No, I know. I was trying to help.
Your input's appreciated, but I think it needs to be everybody. So, just my 2 cents.
Oh, Mr. President.
I would just to follow up, so that's in our financial policy, all right? We just have not been as diligent as we're supposed to be, is having that 5-year plan updated.
Good point. Thank you. Councilor Doucette?
Thank you much, Mr. Chair. I remember when you guys were getting the hybrid interceptors, and I was hoping they would be more dependable than what they are, specifically because the idle time, a good hybrid turns the engine off during idle time. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, then it's still half-baked for this type of service, but hopefully it'll get better over time. But we'll see what happens on the next round. I completely understand the situation you guys are in now, but hopefully it'll get better improvements over time. But I think you guys are, replacing 3 to 5 cruisers a year. That's the standard plan, so we'll get through them, But thank you.
Councilor Vital.
Just one more question before. Part of the forecast isn't just for what we have today, but what we need tomorrow. So if Marlborough grows at 10% over the next 3 years, how many, will we need a new cruiser, or will we go with what we have? Number of vehicles. Like, if the population goes up 10%, does our need for vehicles go up 10%?
Well, I think that would also play into the fact if we have more officers. I think if we have more officers on shift, the cruisers would run more frequently, so they would be used more. So if right now we have minimum staffing on certain shifts, and it's 5 for 2 of the shifts and 4 for the midnight shift. But if that staffing, say the city expands and we increase our department and we have more officers working each shift minimally, then I think those cruisers would run more frequently, and we may need to expand the fleet and maybe add some cruisers with that.
Thank you.
Councilor Preciado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief, I was wondering how many I'm not on the board, by the way. I was wondering how many hybrid vehicles you have in service right now?
7.
7?
Yes.
And they're all pretty much around the same year?
No, one's a detective car that's older, that's a 2017, and the others, let's see, yeah, they're roughly around 2022s. The rest of them were 2022s.
Okay. I'm wondering, just because they're having so many issues and you've spent so much money fixing them, if these would be coming up for replacement much sooner than others would, like the gas-powered ones.
Well, what we've done, and Andy can correct me if I'm wrong, is I think this year what we will be replacing with gas cruisers, we're taking the hybrids off the front line and moving them into the school resource positions and the detail. So they'll be coming off the front line, but we'll keep them because they just won't be used as much. So hopefully they'll hold up a little longer.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Facilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unless there's any other questions, I'd like to make a motion to approve the $321,983 from free cash to capital outlay to fund the cruisers, vests, and tasers.
Motion has been made. I will second that to approve the transfer from free cash to capital outlay to the police department in the amount of $321,983. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? It carries 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to the fire department. Any questions for Chief Breen? Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
I'll open
Council
it up
members.
to, because I'm thinking we've read all the information the Chief supplied us. I will open up to a question. Councilor Oram.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Curious on the age of the equipment that's being requested, the fire station alerting system and the radio box. Do you know what the age of those units are?
Specifically, I do not, Council. These are communication assets that are situated at the police department. Of course, the station alerting system are at the 3 stations. My understanding is they're greater than 10 years old. I suspect it's more like 20.
Okay. And one other question, just the 400 fire alarm systems. I know you said city and school buildings. What other buildings are served by those, by that system?
So, for all the council members, I'll quickly explain. So you may be familiar with what we used to call street boxes that were positioned throughout the city, and you would manually pull those. Those would transmit the alarm via a cable directly to the fire station. We called it a 100 mil loop system. That was disabled, taken down. It's no longer in service here in the city. When that occurred, the existing boxes converted to what we call radio boxes. So now when that happens in a building, that signal is transmitted by radio frequency. So these receivers act to receive that signal and then obviously alert the dispatcher on duty that there's a fire alarm in progress. So when we say there's 400 plus boxes, those are the radio box receivers that are situated throughout the community. They can be either public buildings or private buildings. The majority, of course, are private. So that's what they're supervising or taking.
Like a big industrial building may have, or the hospital, places like that.
So the state, under the fire code, you can choose to use a radio box and actually use that as part of your municipal fire alarm system that we require, or you might use a dial-in service. So depending upon the choice of the occupancy or the building, you can either install a radio box, which would then transmit that signal via radio frequency to the fire department, or it might transmit to a private alarm company where they would then telephone dispatch and say, we have an alarm activation at such and such Lock Drive, etc.
And as we're talking about, on a radio alarm, do you depend on certain antennas being placed, the repeaters? I remember we talked about that before, so.
So each building that communicates or transmits the signal has its own mast, its standalone mast at the actual facility itself. And then we have positioned in the city for communication purposes, listening sites, if you will, and transmission and receive sites for communications. But the radio box receivers themselves are at PD, and they receive that on a specific frequency, transmitting the fire alarm signal. And every day, by the way, every day they report So they test in every day, and the dispatchers get to see which boxes are testing. If it has a problem, it transmits a supervisory signal saying we have a problem with this, so it allows somebody in fire prevention to go out and maybe find out what the problem is. Other aspects of the radio box transmitters is when we're dispatched, let's say it's at a particular building, it will actually transmit and has the ability to identify what we call the zone. So our personnel may be responding to a facility, and we get additional information such as it's radio box, 1, 2, 3, 4, zone 4, which is pull stations on the 3rd floor, or sprinkler activation. So that information is very helpful. If it's 3 in the morning and it's a pull station, someone's there and actually manually activated that. Or if it's a sprinkler system activation, that's obviously significant information for us while we're responding as well.
And to lead to where you were going, I think you answered it, redundancy. So if one tower is down, I know you said it tests every day, but is there a redundancy built into it?
There is.
Well?
We usually have dual receivers, and I think that's in the code as well. So yes, we do have that.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Doucette.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the telephone boxes, the boxes that are on telephones are now self-powered, and they're transmitters, right? For the plates, like there's a fire pole box right there next to the exit station.
Yep.
Okay, are those also powered the same way?
No, so that's a pull station that would transmit by wire to the fire alarm control panel here in this building.
Got it.
And if this building then has a radio box, then that would transmit through radio frequency to the police station.
Okay, so there's wiring inside the building as appropriate, and then basically one flagpole to go get to the
Yes, sir.
powers to be. Okay. Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. So we're really talking about replacing the public boxes then, in that case?
We are talking about the city-owned assets that receive information from all of the systems in the city. So that's our responsibility. So we require them to have these assets to transmit that they're having, fire alarm signalization. And they're old, they're non-compliant, tough to get parts, so we have to invest in this infrastructure to keep them current.
Okay, great, thank you.
No further discussion. I will entertain a motion. Councilor Fusillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would make a motion to approve the transfers for the radio box receiver replacement and the fire station alerting system.
Motion is made. I will second that to approve the transfer from free cash to capital outlay to the fire department in the amount of $170,000. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, all opposed, it carries 5-0. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And up next is DPW Commissioner Scott. Good evening. Thank you, Commissioner, with your letter outlining all the equipment. That's very helpful. I will just open up for any questions, but I think a lot of it is self-explanatory, though there is a lot of equipment in there, and I believe that there might be a few questions, but I'll open that to the Finance Committee and the rest of the council. Councilor Orm.
I was looking to make sure someone else didn't want to go ahead of me. I don't need to be the first one all the time. You heard me mention the 2008 Ford Escape. I actually had a Ford Escape hybrid, and the tranny went. What happened to this hybrid? Do you know offhand? If you don't,
it didn't make inspection. Oh. So rot and just old.
And I respect the fact you've kept pickups for almost 20 years. That's an amazing amount of years. With that said, I just believe I read, it was maybe Hudson or Framingham, they were talking about equipment and how they have a washer bay. Are we still without a washer bay?
Mm-hmm.
I would suggest maybe that be a capital improvement.
So we don't have the washer bay. We have an undercarriage washer.
Undercarriage,
and we do have a pressure washer. So they're doing it by hand. It's not an automated thing. So the real critical thing with the snow and ice is getting the undercarriage washed.
So you have that availability.
Yes.
So that's a start.
Yeah, you gotta rely on the operator to make sure he's doing it, so we have to stay on top of
They drive through a
them.
bay is how it works?
What's that?
I'm sorry, do they drive through a bay? Is that how it
No,
works?
so you drive, so the undercarriage is right at the edge of the garage door. They drive into that. And then that bay is the wash bay that they have the pressure washer in there.
So it's just a matter of doing it after
Yep, it's manual,
snowstorms.
so it's more.
But, no, I support this. I'd motion to approve, but I will wait for others. But I can see based on the age of the equipment and so forth, you know, you need your equipment, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Council Landers.
Just one quick question. I noticed, Commissioner, you have a few rentals.
Yes.
How many and
8.
how long you have?
8 rentals to replace the ones that have gone out of service. We had 8 rentals for winter because we got plow attachments as well. And we've gotten rid of 2 so far, and we're trying to see if we can, we've turned back in the plows, but still have some of the equipment, so.
But as you get new pickups, those will go back.
Correct. Yep. So the pickups don't have, if we can catch this ordering window here, the pickups have a less of a lead time, plus these type of pickups don't get fit out, whereas the bigger trucks, it's a longer lead time, plus that's just for the chassis, then it has to be built up, so you get in another queue line to get them fit out to whatever whether it's a dump body or whatever they're getting put on it, so. Hopefully we can get if this goes through, we can get the pickups relatively quick and clean out the rentals, yep.
Thank you.
Good question, Council Landers. Council Nabin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. You know, when we're all out and about often, you guys are everywhere, right? We see your vehicles all over the city. They are never taking a break. And it is clear that you have done more and more with less as time has come to be able to replace them. And I think we're all appreciative of that. And I'm glad to see this here. I'm definitely looking forward to supporting it because, you know, you get to the point where it just you're pouring money out the window and down the drain to fix these. So happy to see these. I'm glad they're there, and I know you'll continue to put them to good use. So thanks for putting this together.
And on that note, I'd like to thank General Foreman or the Fleet Superintendent is Steve Sonato and his group. There's 4 guys. They do a great job of keeping stuff on the road. So,
thank you, Commissioner. Seeing no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the budget as presented by the DPW.
I will second that motion. Motion has been made and seconded to approve transfer from
Transfer, yes, not your budget, the transfer.
from free cash to capital outlay in the amount of $1,993,000 to capital outlay for the DPW equipment. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? It carries 5-0. Thank you, Commissioner.
thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. And I will be looking for suspension. Is that okay with the committee? All in favor for suspension? Suspension carries. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion was made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor? We are adjourned at 7:53. Thank you, Finance. Thank you.
It's a shame. We would have got there anyway.
Urban Affairs will begin in about 2 minutes.
That was the hybrid interceptor when we introduced it. I was hoping it was going to actually be a benefit. It would be a benefit.